In heart of the Europe there is a country that has had to fight for thousands of years. Good climate, flat ground and fertile land were ideal for agriculture and city founding. After winning hundreds of battles, defending Turkey, conquering Moscow, it became a superpower with territories stretching from the Baltic to Black Sea.
Country survived 2 world wars and 40 years of communism. You may think that was the happy end, but opening up the economy, capitalism and competition ended the idyll. Here, our story begins. One of the hardest working countries in the world, repeatedly attacked with millions of citizens around the world. He defeated communism, and although it was one of the poorest countries in Europe in the 90s.
Today we tell you about the fastest developing country in Europe and future power, Poland. My name is Marcin.
My name is Michał. What's great about Poland? After Poland collapsed, for 123 years, country stayed without independence. Then we had 2 world wars and 40 years of socialism. And remember, socialism is not communism. Communism is a pro-upgraded version of socialism. And starting from 90s, Poland starts seeing brightness again. It seemed to start getting better. In 1999, Poland joined NATO and started a big fight with corruption, housing shortages and poverty. Poland experienced so-called shock therapy. Like any other Eastern European socialist country, Poland had to convert everything, the whole market, to capitalism. And it was done very quickly. Free exchange rate, privatization and simplifying business regulations. After communism collapsed, inflation rate reached 685% in 1990. People's money lost value.
For the several years, Poland is an example of the political and economical transformation. Country has the best result, especially comparing to Russia or Ukraine with their special problem. Poland, like China, has opened up widely for foreign investors and become the industrial powerhouse of Europe.
At the beginning of the century, Polish economy was 27 times smaller than German. Looking at the wages, they were 6 times lower in Poland. As a result, most of the young people left the country. Poland is a country which, commonly with Australia, is the only group of countries with a long run of still continuous development. 30 years with any recession or crisis. In just 3 decades, from one of the poorest countries on the continent, Poland became the 6th power of European Union. Poland chased away Greece and Portugal, and by 2050 it could catch up with France, United Kingdom or even Germany in terms of GDP per capita. Let's check where Poland is really a king.
Country has 312,000 square kilometers of area, 38 million citizens. The currency is Polish zloty. National dish is pierogi ruskie, and people speak using one of the most difficult language on earth, Polish.
Unfortunately, in 2004, Poland faced the biggest challenge in the modern history. After years of negotiations, debates, Poland joined the European Union. And from then, Poland had to start fighting with the biggest economies, best specialists, great capital and innovative products. So how Polish economy is going right now? Let's check. 6th largest country, 6th biggest economy and 6th longest high-speed rail network.
Agriculture. From the historical perspective, centuries ago, country was a leader in grain production. Currently, thanks to the subsidies and investment, it's changing back to the leader in many areas. 11% of labor worked there, much more than in Germany or France. First place in apple production, 3.6 billion tons, exporting to 75 countries. Second place after Russia in raspberries. Second place in Europe in strawberries, 70% of EU market. First place in EU in cherries. Vegetables, 6th place in Europe. The biggest producer of chicken in EU. Agricultural hegemon.
Poland is the assembling warehouse for Europe, like China for USA. Company produces there, there's cheap labor, no taxes, duty-free, and because of good networks in terms of roads, for example, it's easy to transport everything for Poland to the Western Europe. Every 3rd employee works in industry. That's a lot.
Thanks to outsourcing process, the whole world, Europe, US and Japan is building the car, TV and aircraft factories exactly in Poland. Industrial production grew by 10% every year. fourth place in Europe in furniture production, second place in cigarettes, and first place in vodka production. But fourth exporter because many people just like to consume this drink. First place in EU among Windows manufacturers. Sixth largest in copper mining.
And production of 1 million cars every year. And here's a problem. During communist era, there was a Polish company called FSO, but it collapsed, and now there's only Opel, Fiat, Mercedes and Toyota factories in the country. There are some plans for Polish company making Polish national electric cars, called Izera, but there's only a plan, and now there are no Polish Tesla. And the luxurious industry. After years of deterioration of the large shipyards on the coast like Gdańsk or Szczecin, Poland currently switched to luxurious yachts and has over 60% of the European market. 95% of them goes for an export. Here was a modern business plan. Instead of a few big ships, make more small ones, higher margin. Also, maybe you heard about a big cosmetic company, Inglot. They have even a store in Manhattan.
But in 2021 there is a problem, because in USSR investments were made in steel mills, shipyards and mining. Coal production has been declining since 90s. But the European Green Deal requires reduction of CO2 emission. As you can see, the smoke problem is clearly present there. However, Poland is slowly solving this problem. For example, today 15% of energy comes from renewables, mostly from the wind and sun. There are plans to build 1,000 of windmills on the Baltic Sea and invest into the solar panel and even build 9 atomic reactors by 2040.
And the problem of takeovers, because after joining EU, the borders were opened. So lots of Western companies with a huge amount of capital just came to Poland and bought out lots of companies. As a result, lots of people are complaining about European integration because they're calling it colonization. Definitely Poland is a leader in transport. Most often, if you will meet some truck driver in Europe, he will be Polish.
Not surprisingly, Poland has one of the highest rates of cars per 1,000 people. This is due to poor communication after socialism era, as well as the sense of luxury of your own car. Everyone wants their own vehicle. A highway network is currently under construction. Plan contains 80 to 100 kilometers and half of that is finished. Once ready, the network would be the 4th longest in Europe. In terms of high-speed rail network, there are also some huge plans. 1,500 kilometers of lines, same as Germany has already. Currently there's only 220 kilometers.
Currently the world is ruled by finance. Polish banks in majority has a Polish capital. The biggest one, PKO BP, regularly passed European stress test with high result. So the risk on the Polish banking market are pretty low. The stock exchange market in Warsaw is weak. The chart is just horizontal, even in 20 years. It is stable, but you won't earn much. Poland is the leader in non-cash and mobile payments. The first countries in Europe with Google Pay were UK and Poland. So there are modern NFC terminal everywhere. If you come to Poland, you can pay everywhere by cards or by phone. The most important place in Poland for the finance is capital city, Warsaw. This city with 3 million people are home for the banks, investors, Big Four and other corporations. It is the one of the most growing financial and fintech metropole in Europe. Thanks to the Brexit, more companies can move there and stay in EU.
There are currently no software or computer manufacturers in Poland, but Poland is the 4th largest exporter of games worldwide, mainly thanks to CD Projekt Red, who created Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk. The games have been sold in 28 and 13 million copies. CD Projekt is the 2nd largest developer in Europe, after Ubisoft. Also worth mentioning is biotechnology companies, which were still growing.
Overall, the biggest companies that you can recognize, but they are Polish. PKN Orlen, CD Projekt, Syntos, Asseco and Comarch, CCC, Drutex, Fakro, Cross, Inpost, Reserved, House, Crop, Sinsay.
However, after 30 years of development, there are some problems on the horizon. And on how Poland will manage that depends the future, so it will be going and developing again, or coming back to the poverty. Aging of the society. In 2050, Poland will be one of the oldest countries in the whole Europe. And this means a big problem with taking care about pensioners who will live longer and longer. In 30 years, every 4th person on the street would be a pensioner. The result is not much better than Germany or Japan.
In recent years, Poland has welcomed the largest number of economical immigrants in the Union, mainly Ukrainians, almost 2 million people. You attract hardworking and genius people. Thanks to this, you have innovations, business and still young society. Because usually the immigrants are young people. According to research, 3 million apartments are missing. This means that you live longer with your parents and it is harder to find your own home.
Lack of large companies. More than half of export are made by foreign companies. Polish companies with no capital have problems with competition and growth. They mainly sell to Germany, 27%, and main assembly point for them, which is why there is a problem with raising salaries and innovation. Assembler has to be cheap, not innovative. There's a risk of a middle income trap.
In Poland, less money is invested in research and development. And in the ranking of innovation in EU, Poland is the fourth from the bottom. Without innovation, robot, technology and know-how, they will remain a poor neighbor of Western Europe.
Chances for the future. In 2020, after 30 years of uninterrupted development, the economy dropped by 3.6%. It's still one of the best results in Europe. It's because the low importance of tourism, high support for remote working and industrial character of the country. The factories just had to start working.
Since 2019, Poland is officially in a group of the high developed country. So this is an economical Champions League.
You may heard that in Poland there's no jobs, bad roads, corruption, everyone wears a tracksuit and there's a white bears on the street.
But Poland is a country where the highest buildings in the whole EU are being built. It's easy to find job, and prices are half lower than in the West.
In 2021, according to IMF, Poland will grow by 4.6%. And if they return to the track from before the pandemic, will catch up with the richest countries in Europe. Additionally, the Union is a difficult battlefield for business. But in the last 15 years, Poland received net 130 billion euro. And in the new financing horizon until 2027 with the Recovery Fund. It will receive next 160 billion euro for infrastructure and green transformation. This is more than Hungarian GDP. Poland is the only one country which gets more and more European fundings. In that way, EU created a strong ally in Eastern Europe. In 2050, Poland will have the longest infrastructure network, modern airports, green energy, and become core of the European Union, together with Germany and France. Like our video and subscribe our channel.
And please write down what's the first thing coming to your mind with the word Poland. See ya!
So, this is the Champions Leagues.
Champions League.
Champions League. Renewables. For example, today 15% of energy comes from renewables.